Imagine this. You are standing in a lush, beautifully manicured green field under the bright, glorious summer sun of 1807. You are the most trusted, most exhausted personal advisor to the Emperor of the French, Napoleon Bonaparte. You have just survived some of the most brutal, blood-soaked artillery bombardments in the entire history of the European continent. You have stood side by side with the greatest military genius of the century as he absolutely humiliated the Russians, completely destroyed the Austrians, and sent the Prussians packing. You think your boss is completely fearless, a literal god of war who bows to no man, no empire, and no weather condition. You think he is untouchable. Well, you are entirely, hilariously wrong. Right now, in this very moment, you are standing frozen, in absolute sheer disbelief, watching your invincible, legendary emperor, screaming his lungs out, running for his absolute life, desperately trying to sprint back to his imperial carriage. And his terrifying, unstoppable enemy, it is not the British Royal Navy, it is not a coalition of angry European monarchs. It is an army of 3,000 tiny, fluffy, twitchy-nosed domestic bunny rabbits. Welcome to the single most embarrassing, ridiculously catastrophic logistical nightmare of the 19th century. Your life is about to get so incredibly stupid. Let us rewind a little bit to see how you ended up in this absolute circus. It is July 1807. The treaties of Tilsit have just been signed. The air in Paris smells like freshly baked baguettes, an absolute unchallenged global dominance. Napoleon is at the absolute peak of his imperial power. He is literally outplaying every single major superpower on the map. He is feeling fantastic. His ego is the size of the moon, and he decides, you know what? We need to celebrate this monumental level of winning. He wants to host a massive, luxurious, incredibly sophisticated rabbit hunt to entertain the absolute highest-ranking VIPs, generals, and diplomats of the empire. It is supposed to be a majestic display of French power, wealth, and aristocratic leisure. So, he delegates the entire operation to his chief of staff, Alexandre Berthier. Now, as Berthier's right-hand man, you know a few things about your immediate supervisor. Berthier is an absolute mathematical genius when it comes to organizing troop movements, calculating supply lines across frozen mountains, and planning complex artillery crossfire. He is the guy who makes Napoleon's impossible battle plans actually work on the ground. But when it comes to organizing a fancy outdoor party for the rich and famous, the man is a walking, talking disaster area. He is an absolute liability. Berthier receives the order directly from the emperor. The deadline is terrifyingly tight. He needs to procure a massive amount of wild rabbits to ensure the emperor and his guests have plenty of targets to shoot at. We are talking thousands of rabbits, but there is a massive, glaring problem. You cannot just magically summon 3,000 wild, energetic, fast-running hares out of thin air on a week's notice. Berthier is sweating profusely. He is pacing back and forth in his lavishly decorated office, frantically biting his nails. You suggest telling the emperor that maybe they should just hunt a few deer instead, or perhaps reschedule the event until proper wild rabbits can be trapped by the royal gamekeepers. But Berthier looks at you like you have just insulted his entire ancestry. You do not tell Napoleon Bonaparte to wait. You do not tell the Emperor of the French that you cannot find some stupid woodland creatures. So, in a moment of pure, unadulterated panic-induced stupidity, Berthier makes a decision that will forever echo in the halls of comedic history. He decides to take a massive shortcut. He sends his men down to the local agricultural markets, directly to the peasant farmers who breed livestock. He throws enormous bags of gold coins at them and buys up every single domestic farm rabbit he can find. 3,000 fluffy, incredibly tame, completely human-dependent, carrot-munching pets. They are stuffed into hundreds of wooden cages and transported to the hunting grounds. As you stand there, watching the royal servants stack these cages along the edge of the pristine hunting field, you pull Berthier aside. You whisper urgently into his ear, pointing out a very crucial, undeniable biological fact. You tell him, sir, these are domestic farm rabbits. They do not run away from humans. They associate humans with giant, delicious heads of lettuce and warm hugs. Wild hares are supposed to be terrified of us, but these things look like they want to be petted. Berthier nervously adjusts his spectacularly feathered hat, completely dismissing your incredibly valid concerns. He tells you to shut up and just smile. He says, a rabbit is a rabbit. They all have long ears, they all hop, and once the guns start firing, they will run. The emperor is a busy man. He is not going to put on his reading glasses and inspect the genetic lineage of his target practice. It is going to be perfectly fine. Spoiler alert, it is not going to be fine. It is going to be a disaster of epic proportions. The silence between you and Berthier is heavy. awkward, and filled with the impending doom of a man who knows he has just made a monumental mistake, but is entirely too stubborn to admit it. The moment of truth arrives. The majestic brass horns echo across the open field, signaling the beginning of the grand imperial hunt. Napoleon Bonaparte himself rides out on his magnificent white stallion, wearing his iconic bicorn hat, looking like the absolute conqueror of the known universe. He is flanked by the most terrifying, battle-hardened marshals in the French army. They are all holding elegantly crafted hunting rifles, ready for some relaxing sport. Napoleon gives the royal signal. The servants pull the heavy wooden levers, and the doors to the hundreds of cages are thrown wide open. 3,000 rabbits are released. This is the moment they are supposed to scatter in absolute terror. But they do not run away, not a single one of them. Instead, 3,000 tiny noses sniff the air simultaneously. They look up, and what do they see? A large group of humans. And in the domesticated brains of these farm rabbits, humans equal food. And so, it begins. Not a retreat, but a massive frontal assault. The rabbits turn completely around, forming an unstoppable wave of fluffy fur, and they charge directly at the greatest military commander on Earth. You are standing there, absolutely paralyzed, watching this furry tsunami accelerate. They swarm the field, moving faster than the Russian cavalry. Napoleon fires a shot, but it is utterly useless against the sheer volume of the incoming horde. The rabbits reach the emperor. They swarm around his boots. They start climbing up his pristine white trousers, pulling at his gold-laced coat, aggressively demanding their lunch. The Emperor of the French is furiously swatting at them with his riding crop, yelling commands at his generals. But the legendary heroes of Austerlitz are completely useless, frantically swinging their rifles like clubs, desperately trying to beat back the sea of hungry bunnies. The sheer absurdity breaks your brain. You draw your magnificent officer sword, but what are you going to do? Stab a bunny? Napoleon realizes the battle is lost. The man who conquered Europe is forced to execute a full tactical retreat. He turns and sprints toward his imperial carriage, waving his arms wildly. But the rabbits are tactical geniuses. They divide into two separate columns, flawlessly outflanking the emperor's carriage. Some of them actually leap into the carriage itself, forcing Napoleon to literally throw them out the window as the driver aggressively whips the horses to escape. You are left standing in the field, covered in rabbit fur, looking at Berthier, who looks like he wants the earth to swallow him whole. So, you learned a ridiculous historical lesson that day. Never compromise on military logistics, and never fight hungry farm pets. Maybe from that day forward, Napoleon feared adorable bunnies more than the Russian winter. If you want to survive more traumatizing, hilarious point-of-view experiences from the dumbest corners of history, do not forget to subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and leave a comment. Let me know which historical disaster you want to be thrown into next. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next crazy adventure.